The goals for the session tonight, first of all, is we want to help you develop a better understanding of the values and the concerns of people who may differ from you. We have an issue in the country where we've gotten to where all we hear about another person is the first sentence that they say. And we decide to disagree with that or be offended by that. And we never take the trouble to dig a little deeper into that person and ask them why. Why do you feel that way? And if we were to do so, we might sometimes be very, very surprised that even though we may still disagree with them on that issue, if we ask them why they feel as they do, they may have some real experiences in their life or some values in their life that give some legitimacy to their life's journey and to how it led them to where they are. And it can help us maybe not agree with them, but help us to somewhat better understand where they're coming from. Part of what we'll do is talk about strengthening our listening skills. We again have become a society where we like to talk first and listen only if we're tied to a chair and gagged. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about how listening can be important. As you've all heard, God gave us one mouth and two ears, and he must have done that for some reason. And then better skills with sharing with others, and particularly sharing your views in a way and in a manner and in a style that is acceptable to others. Instead of, as I like to say, instead of pointing and spitting, there are other ways and more palatable ways of expressing yourself. Some ground rules for the night and ground rules for Braver Angels. First of all, we're going to talk about expectations that we should just abandon, and we should just stop having certain goals or desired outcomes. Then introductions, basic skills, practice, and wrap up. Under the ground rules, we are going to talk tonight about your communication skills. We're not going to talk about policies. We're not going to talk about who's for and against abortion, who's for and against being in Ukraine, whatever it may be. We are going to talk about, regardless of what policy you're talking about, how to do it with more civility in your communication skills. As I also like to say, Braver Angels doesn't care what your political position is. Braver Angels' goal is to help you express your opinion without pointing and spitting. Tonight is not going to be a competition. Tonight is not going to be me against you. It's going to be all of us cooperating and working together as a unit and as a team. And hopefully we can reach agreement on that. If you were here to compete, and since we're not going to do that, I'm sure it's Thursday night. I'm sure there's a Thursday night college football game. You can go to the bar down the hill and watch them compete. So, expectations to abandon. Number one, you are, and this is in life, this is not tonight, in life, you need to begin to decide that you are not likely to change someone else's opinion by pointing and spitting at them. And in fact, I will even be so bold as to ask you, can somebody tell me when in the last 6 months to year that has worked for you? Have any of you in the last 6 months to a year converted a Trumper to a Bidenite or vice versa by pointing and spitting? And there you have it. So, and as the doctor says, if it hurts when you do that, then stop doing that. And what we're here to talk about tonight is, well, okay, if you're going to stop doing that, then what do you start doing? And we're here to talk about what to start doing. And then the other expectation is that the other people that you talk to will know these skills and will use them themselves. Probably not. They will probably still point and spit. But what you're going to learn tonight is a more civil way to respond to that. And by your behavior and your modeling of a more civil approach, maybe at least some of those other people will pick up on it and will respect it. Okay, so I'm about to ask you to look around the room and pick someone that you might like to partner with, someone that you maybe did not come here with tonight. If you are here with someone that you already know, try to look around for somebody different. And in a minute, I'm going to ask you to turn to each other and have a brief discussion. And what you're going to talk to each other about, we're going to give you 6 minutes. And we're going to try to take like 3 minutes each. One of you do 3 minutes, and then the other do 3 minutes. And we will tell you when you're halfway through. And just introduce yourselves to each other. Just meet the other person. And then just talk a little bit about, tell the other person just why you came here tonight. This is Little Rock. This is a big city. There's a lot to do tonight. And you decided to be here instead of doing one of a lot of other things. So why? Why are you here, and what do you hope to get out of this? And so pick somebody else out, and the two of you just share why each of you is here for a few minutes. All right? Here we go. And we're going to go ahead and sort of get a little bit more into exactly that, how to better talk to people. First of all, it's very appropriate that we are here tonight as a part of Interfaith Week because one of the core elements of all faiths is the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or as you see on your screen, the way that the same idea is phrased in the different major faiths. It is a central core part of all of the major faiths. And what Braver Angels does is Braver Angels hopes to help you, it hopes to give you some more specific communication tools so that when you're expressing yourself and when you're communicating with another, you can do so in a more civil way and in a way that creates more bonding than conflict with the other person. And certainly that is a key element in living and in modeling a life of living the golden rule. So let's get into it. A key, core, foundational, specific skill that Braver Angels promotes is known as LAPP skills, L-A-P-P. It is an outline and it is a foundation for how to guide a more civil conversation. And first, you start by listening. Instead of by pointing and spitting and yelling, you start by listening and honoring the other by allowing them to speak. And if necessary, you can start by asking them a question. You ask the question that triggers them to start talking, and then you can listen to them. And that means to really listen. Not really listening to them, but planning your gotcha, insulting retort, but actually listening to what they're saying. As I said, turn your inner debater off, and then listen closely to what they're saying, because what you're going to do next is you're going to summarize it back to them. You're going to say, so what I thought I heard you say is. So you have to have listened to them closely enough that you're going to be able to do that. Focus on their viewpoint. Also, look for something that they say that you might can agree with, that you might can find a way to start a little bit of bonding with common ground. Oh, well, I agree with you on that particular point. And we've become a society where that's become a little bit alien, or at least to a lot of us, maybe not to some of you that are here tonight. But to begin by listening, first of all, by listening instead of telling, and second of all, really, truly listening to what the other people is saying, and learning about them and who they are by what they are saying. This has become a little bit alien in our society. Do any of you have difficulty with allowing others to speak and really immersing yourself in what they're saying and why they may be saying it? And if so, why is that? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm usually thinking ahead about what I want to say. Don't pay that much attention.
Right. And a way to deal with that, it said on the previous screen, well, it's not on that screen, but a way that you can help yourself better focus on what they're saying is that while they're initially talking, instead of you're formulating your retort, instead of thinking about formulating your retort, think about you're going to ask them a follow-up question. And if you're thinking, what am I going to ask them a follow-up question about? Well, the way you answer that is by actually listening to them. You can't ask them a follow-up question unless you've heard what they've said. And so you can change your priority from what am I going to say regardless of what they said, to what is something that they are saying that I can respond to that. I can say, yes, I agree with you about that. Or you can say, well, I didn't completely understand that. Could you clarify point A, B, C? So if your focus is on you're gonna be following up with them rather than you're just gonna be spouting whatever you want to say regardless of what they said, that can help you focus on their comments. The next thing that we're going to introduce, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion here for a few minutes about conservative and liberal values and concerns. And these have been put together over the last few years by Braver Angels by doing seminars and by even having facilitations and discussions between conservatives and liberals, reds and blues across the nation. And Braver Angels has put together some common principles, common ideas, common concepts that are at the core of both conservative and liberal philosophy. And if you understand them, and if you understand some of these core values and concerns that conservatives have and that liberals have, then you can somewhat better understand where they are coming from. You can if somebody says I'm pro-abortion, or if somebody says I'm against being in the Ukraine, and if you understand some of these underlying values and concerns, it can at least help you understand their deeper motivations for why they have this surface belief about abortion or Ukraine. Some of the conservative values that keep emerging in seminars that Braver Angels does nationwide. Conservatives believe deeply in individual freedom and personal responsibility. Conservatives really focus on the individual and each individual's responsibilities. They believe very much in free market capitalism. They are very, very patriotic and very enthusiastically love and support the country. And they have very strong social values rooted in religion, family, and respect for traditions. And they believe very much in local government. Local government, local charity, the local government being primary in government affairs. Some concerns that conservatives have. They are concerned about grouping people into identity categories that compromise individuality. They have a concern about government expansion that will limit the freedom of individuals and businesses. They are skeptical about the ability of government to manage complex programs. And they are suspicious of utopian promises, and they caution about social engineering as coming with many unintended or unexpected consequences. And they are concerned about immediately being labeled as some sort of an ism or a phobia when they express their views. On the liberal side, some core liberal values include inclusiveness, especially for those that are considered to be on the margins, diversity, and the value of human differences, a level playing field for people who have been denied opportunities, an active government that helps those in need sustain a healthy environment and ensure fairness, and safe social environments, which includes attention to safe language, safe communication. Liberal concerns include abuses of free market capitalism that lead to exploitation and inequality, ignoring historical forces of injustice that are still present, patriotism that is not balanced with criticism, groups who are left out of social progress, and being immediately labeled with terms such as woke or big government liberal when presenting views on public policy and cultural issues. In a minute, we're going to talk a little bit about this question. How might better understanding the core values and concerns of people who are different from you politically help you listen, communicate, and disagree better about policy differences? If you have a little bit better understanding of some of those concepts there about somebody from the other side and where they may be coming from with their deeper concerns, how can that better help you understand and communicate with that person? So what we're going to do is we're going to give you about 2 minutes to just ponder that question yourself. Just in your own mind, think about this question. And then we're going to let you pair back up with your partner and let the two of you then discuss it. So for a couple of minutes, just reflect on this in your own mind. Okay, here we go.
We're going to get into acknowledge. We talked about listening, right? So this acknowledge part is how you show you're listening, and it forces you to listen. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about why we're doing this. We want to acknowledge people and listen carefully because we want to connect with them before we start giving our opinion. All right? So connect first before you disagree. That's the principle in operation here. So don't start as soon as you've heard what they've had to say by making your counter argument. Instead, acknowledge what they said. Okay, I hear you. I get that this issue is really important to you. And notice that if you do that acknowledging, it could be about the content of what they're saying, or you could be just acknowledging the intensity of their feelings. Okay, I see you're really passionate about this stance. Okay. So, one thing that helps with that, a brief paraphrase of what they've said to you goes a long way to help them feel heard. So you might say something like, okay, so for you, this issue is about personal responsibility, and it's not something you don't think the government should be involved in that, okay? Or, if I understand you right, then you're saying this is a public health and safety issue that the government has a responsibility to regulate. Did I get that right? Okay, so these are the kinds of paraphrases and follow-ups to show that you're listening and to encourage them to continue and to make sure you got it right, because the good thing is you're waiting to see if they let you know you got it right. They say, yeah, exactly, or yeah, that's about right. But if you see, or say, no, not really, then you have misunderstood something from what they're trying to say, and you give them a chance to clarify it and for you to have a better chance to understand things. So you might hear things like, if you're doing all this, you might say, okay, I hear you on climate change, then you don't want the federal government regulating the economy over a threat that you think might not materialize. Or you, on the other side, might say, okay, so you believe we're running out of time to address climate change and you think we need to take some strong measures now then, okay? Now, you may not feel that way at all, but you're trying to encapsulate their views so that they feel heard, okay? Next, ask questions of clarification if you need to. You can agree if you have a chance, and then make sure that you just pause and make sure you understand things. So, question for you. What are the advantages of acknowledging first before sharing a perspective where you disagree? So somebody tell me what you think the advantage might be to acknowledge what the other person says before you start saying what you have to say. Yes, ma'am.
I think it develops trust. You know that person is listening,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can have you can't exchange.
Yeah, so when you've given them back to them exactly what they said, this guy's listening to me, he's genuine, okay, so that does develop trust. Very good. So they feel heard, they feel taken seriously, it helps build trust, you clarify any misunderstandings, and you know the thing, they feel like they don't have to repeat themselves if they feel like, okay, they got that, I can move on to my next point. Okay. And the other thing here, it can be helpful then after you've done that, after you have paraphrased and got it, or even in the process of saying that, if you can say something you agree with, and you may think, well, I don't have much in agreement with this, you'd be surprised how much you can find to agree with someone when they're talking. Little bits and pieces, or maybe just how strongly you feel that's an important issue. So you might say, well, you know, I agree with you. The immigration system, I do believe is broken. Now it sounds for you like your solution is blah, blah, blah. You may have a very different solution, but you both agree the immigration system is broken, for example. Okay. Acknowledge. Practice acknowledge now. That's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read you some prompts, and if you turn in your handouts, I think it's page 4 or thereabouts, you'll see, basically you'll have a liberal statement and a conservative statement on policing and public safety, okay? So what we're going to have you do, we read them both. You decide which one of those passages is furthest away from the way you see it. And that's the one you're going to practice acknowledging, okay? So this is something we're going to come back over and over, so pay attention to this. All right. Now, I want you to, after we read this, or when you hear the one that you want to respond to with acknowledgement, write your acknowledgement statement down. Pretend you're about to get in a conversation and you're going to write down, here's what I'm going to say to that person that just told me that about policing and public safety. Is that making sense? Are y'all following that yet? Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read, let me just show you this. See this? This is what I'm going to read. And if you look in your handout, you should have this, the conservative prompt on policing. And then after that, you should also have a liberal prompt on policing. So we're going to read both of those, and you can read along yourselves. Pick which one you want to respond to. It should be the one that's the furthest from your own position. If you tend to be a liberal, you're probably going to respond to the conservative prompt. So read that conservative prompt, and then write a brief acknowledgement statement where you acknowledge what that person said. Does that help? All right? Okay, so we'll go with this. We'll just go ahead and read, and then we'll go at it again. So the conservative statement on policing might be, well, I think too many liberals are ignoring the problem of rising crime in this community. It's getting scary to live here. I hear too much defund the police and other anti-police rhetoric. I know there are some bad apples in law enforcement, but by and large, our officers are doing a good job. And it's demoralizing for them when civic leaders and regular citizens don't support them. I want our city to do the right thing by expanding the law enforcement presence. I know officers can't solve every problem, but they are our first line of defense and they deserve our full support. Now, if this next one we read, the liberal view, is closer to your viewpoint, you're going to write an acknowledgement on this conservative because you're having a conversation with the conservative here. They just told you that. Now you've got to respond to them, not with your viewpoint, but by acknowledging what they said. So write down a sentence or two where you acknowledge what they just said. And now go ahead and write down if that's the one you want to respond to. I'll go ahead and read the liberal prompt in case some of you would agree with the conservative idea and you want to respond to the liberal prompt. You conservatives seem to think that throwing more money into law enforcement is going to solve the crime problem. Crime comes from poverty and discrimination, and it has to be solved by addressing these problems. Communities of color in particular don't trust the police, and for good reason. So instead of increasing the police budget, I support funding for social workers who can respond to mental health 911 calls rather than armed officers showing up. And we need to support community agencies that can get to the root causes of crime. Let's stop overemphasizing law enforcement and take a broader view of how to improve public safety. All right, so that's the two ideas. So write down your acknowledgement, what you heard that person say. Not where they're wrong, not what you think, but what you heard them say. Summarize it and find a place to agree if you can on some part of it. I'll give you another minute and then we'll break into pairs again. Okay, go ahead and break into your pairs again and take turns reading to your partner what you came up with. If you have time, you can talk about it, but at least read yours to each other. Go ahead and do that now. You got 2 minutes. I want to hear some thoughts from this. Raise your hands and let me know if you want to share your acknowledgement statement. I'd like to hear that. Who wants to go first? Yes, ma'am. All right. Now, which one did you respond to?
The conservative.
Okay, you responded to the conservative prompt. Okay.
And did you just speak up? I responded to the
No, okay, I
conservative.
thought I missed it.
And I think I hear you saying you're afraid of crime rising and police need to be supported to combat it. If that's correct, I agree that crime rising is a big concern to me too.
Wonderful job. So she acknowledged it, didn't give an opinion about the other person's views, but she restated them, summarized them, and then she found something to agree with them. Great. Okay. Another one. Someone else. There's a million ways to do these acknowledgments. Yes, ma'am.
What I looked at was, I agree with you that we have to have law enforcement officers. We can't be without law enforcement officers.
Okay. That was the agreement. What about your acknowledgement?
My acknowledgement is that I know you're concerned about officers being asked to solve all problems. And that is a concern of mine as well.
Okay. Was that an acknowledgement of something they said? Okay. All right. Then that's acknowledgement, and then you found something to agree with. Okay. That's the idea. So the thing with acknowledgement is to show that you've been listening and to build that respect, like David said. So be sure that your acknowledgement statement restates or paraphrases in some way some important aspects of what they said. And then find agreement if you can. You may not always find agreement, and that's okay, but be sure you acknowledge and paraphrase. Okay, now let's move to the next P skill. Actually, that's the first P skill. Pivot. Now, this one is one that seems to be, I don't know, for some reason we have trouble with this one. A pivot means, okay, you've been doing a good job of listening. You're hearing what the other person's saying. You're demonstrating your respect for them by acknowledging what they said, by being civil and respectful in how you paraphrase what they said. You maybe even find a place to agree. Now, you want to have your own say, right? We all want to share our own views. Well, the pivot is kind of like if you're driving down the road in your car and you turn on the turn signal, you're saying, I want to turn right. So if it's free, I'm going to turn right, okay? So you're giving a signal you're about to change direction. But you haven't said anything yet. So the pivot is basically saying, I would like to say something different. But it's kind of like asking permission, okay? So this is the kind of thing you can do. Like, some people, they go on and on. They're real passionate, and they just go on and repeat themselves, and you can't get a word in edgewise. This is an opportunity to use that in a kind way. So you might say something like, well, could I offer my thoughts on this? Or, I've been thinking about that a lot. Or I've been reading up on that, and I have some thoughts on that. Could I share them with you? Would it be okay to hear my thoughts on that? A lot of different ways to do it, but the point is, pivot by giving them a chance to respond to your saying, I'd like to go now, is that okay? Because it may not be okay. Maybe they're just afraid of what that liberal in front of them or that conservative in front of them is going to say, and they just want to have their say. Well, if that's the case, back off after you do the pivot. Don't go ahead and give your viewpoint. go back to listening and acknowledging some more so you can start doing more connecting and building trust, and then maybe the next time they'll be ready. So, the pivot. Remember, you're not offering your perspective yet. You're just simply asking to change the view. All right, so if you do that, let me make sure I'm not missing this. If they give you some indication, it might be verbal or nonverbal. They might say, go ahead, or some nonverbal thing to indicate it's okay. Then it'll be time to go to the other P word, perspective. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I want you to write down a pivot statement. Remember, you're writing the acknowledgement. You've been listening to somebody. You've acknowledged what they had to say. You found a point of agreement. Now, write down a pivot statement you might say to them when you're getting ready to have your turn. Go ahead and do that now. Somebody else new, I don't mind repeat offenders, but let's go for a couple of new ones occasionally. Yes, sir. Donald.
Would you be willing to hear my perspective on this?
Very good. Okay, so you're asking their permission overtly, and that's okay. What's another one? Yes.
So I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Can I share my thoughts with you?
Excellent. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Heard. This is what I think.
Heard. This is what I think. Okay. That's really short and to the point. Okay. Now, the only thing, if I was being picky, I might say, this is what I think. It implies that I'm going whether you like it or not. And the notion in pivoting is seeing if they're ready. They may not be ready. So if you're...
Would have heard. Would you like to know what?
There you go. There it is. There's the pivot. Very good. Let's move on to the biggie, the one we've all been waiting for. Now we get to talk, right? All right. So now you have listened carefully. You have acknowledged what they had to say. You've pointed out any common ground. And hopefully you have pivoted unless they just said, well, what do you think? Now, sometimes that will happen. You don't need a pivot. But if they don't actually say, what do you think? Then you use the pivot. Good. All right. So one of the things that you can do in offering when it's time for you to say something, I statements. How many people know what I statement means? You've heard that before. Most of us have. It's a real common communication technique that is saying, use the personal pronoun I to say what you believe. Now, that's different than a truth statement. So what we want is an I statement, not a truth statement. A truth statement is, well, here's the way it is. Look, if we don't stop the people from coming over the border, we're not going to have a country in 10 years. That is a truth statement. An I statement would be more like, I'm afraid that if we don't stop the rampant immigration, that it'll have bad consequences for our country, or something like that. So you're saying, this is my opinion, not this is the truth. Because if you just say it as a truth statement, the implication is, and if you disagree, you're wrong. So you don't want to do that. All right. Tell me, why do you think I statements are helpful? Why are they important if you're going to give your own perspective?
I think people automatically get more defensive if you start saying you
Yeah.
instead of...
That's very good. I used to do communication skills training a lot too, and that was one of the things I did. Every time you hear you, like, well, you're wrong. Well, see, you don't understand. Notice how I automatically pointed? How does it feel to be pointed at, right? So, if you, yes, sir.
If you use an I statement, it indicates that you're open to hearing new information that could potentially change your mind. Like if you say, this is true, well, maybe you're wrong. Maybe the other person knows something that you don't.
Okay.
And you're open to you're open to that communication.
Very good. Okay. Shows openness. Okay. Gives the other person hope, whether he exists or not, but you're giving them a chance. Okay. All right. Any others?
If it's my opinion, I kind of have a right to my own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The way I feel, you can't
Yeah.
really argue with how I feel.
That's true. That's true. Since it's not a truth statement, it's just simply, this is the way I feel. Well, everybody's got an opinion, right? Okay. All right, the next thing about a perspective statement that's helpful is to name the sources of your views. Now, I don't mean like, some of you scientifically trained folks, you don't have to bring out your literature review with all the resources and everything. It doesn't have to be a randomized, double-blind controlled, placebo-controlled trial. It can be if you've got it, but it could be something as simple as saying, well, I've read a lot on this, and my reading has convinced me that blah, 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 or it makes me believe this. Or it could be, well, I'm basing my data on my views on gun control because the risk of danger from guns is much higher from suicide than it is from strangers attacking you. So that's why I believe that way. So, and it could be other things. One that we'll mention next here is sharing a story. Sharing a story or a life experience or some personal, familiarity with the issue is really critical. Telling a story that's personal to you is one of the most powerful ways to communicate that people are automatically tuned in as human beings to listen to and to have an impact. So if you can give some sort of personal story, like let's say the issue is immigration. Well, I come at my views on immigration because I'm a child of immigrants. Okay. Or, I used to live in a border town, so let me tell you some of the things I saw there. Okay. Those little personal stories can help. And then I've mentioned this before, but trying to find something to agree with is really important because we need common ground if we're going to have democracy work. And looking for ways to agree, however small, is a way to start building bridges. So look for some way that you can find something to agree with. It may simply be that you both believe this issue is really important for us to resolve, even though we have opposite views on it. Or that we both are very passionate about this, even though we differ. Okay? That is a point of agreement if you can do nothing else. Now, there are a couple of things to think about avoiding. Avoiding negative labels for the other person or what they say. You may not call them a name, but if you assign a negative name or label to what they're saying, that's just like calling them a name. So, for instance, if they're saying something to you and you say, well, that's a racist policy you're describing. Okay? Well, that's name calling of a sort. It's a negative label, so avoid that. Or, well, what you're describing is socialism. Well, once again, you're labeling, you're putting the person off, you're putting more of the barriers up. So avoid that. And then the other thing, you Democrats, you Republicans, you MAGA folks, okay, people are it's just going to stop, come to a complete halt when you do that. So you're going to have to be careful of that. Now, it's time to write again. I'm going to give you a moment to write down a perspective statement in response to the prompt that you chose earlier. Remember, we're still working on that same one. So this time, I want you to write a perspective statement, and you may just, since this would be longer, you might just do bullet points, but try to lay out a few things you will say when you're telling that other person, well, here's my view. You've done the pivot, they're ready for you to talk. And two things to focus on. Try to use an I statement and try to find something to agree with. So go ahead and do that. I'll give you a couple of minutes. All right, so now that we're back at it, I want to hear from some of you your perspective statements. Remember, they'll be focusing on I statements and something you agree with. So, who wants to go first?
I can read what I wrote. I said that I believe that we can respect/support law enforcement while also still tackling issues that lead to crime and police abuse and mistrust.
Nice. So you said you actually almost put an acknowledgement in there with your perspective. You said you're open to meeting their needs and yours. Yeah. Good job. Okay. Go for it.
No, you. I want to hear you. I said I believe that we can respect and support law enforcement while also tackling issues that lead to crime and police mistrust and abuse. So here, you can just copy.
Yeah. All right. Somebody else. Come on, don't be shy. It's not time to be shy. Yes, sir.
I said, this is how I see it. I agree with you. There's a lot of problems with the current model. I don't think putting more money into it, more money and more police in the streets is going to fix the problem. It's more complex than that. We've got to look at different issues and different ways to address it.
Okay, all right, good. So you agreed about you covered the bits. You told your opinion. You showed the agreement. Good. All right. What else? How do you hope to use these skills in the future? So I want those of you who have some thoughts on that, tell me how you think you might be able to use the skills we learned tonight in your own life going forward. That's a question for you to volunteer right now. How will you use this? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm having lunch with my brother tomorrow, and I'll definitely have these things on my mind.
Oh, good. Excellent. Do you and your brother have differing political views?
We have very different.
Oh, that's wonderful. You know, this is a good time of year to do these workshops because we got the holidays coming up, and that guarantees this, doesn't it? Those difficult conversations. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry for talking too much, but I think this is a skill set that I have to use no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be just politics or anything. It can just be in your job. It can be whenever you're, or I'm in sales, so
Yeah.
I'm talking maybe to a customer.
You make a...
Overcoming a rejection.
Yeah, you make a very good point, and sometimes we talk about that in other workshops. These skills are not new. A lot of you have heard some of these already because these are well-known communication and conflict resolution skills that have been used by therapists and other people in the helping professions for decades. And in fact, one of our founders of Braver Angels is a family and marriage therapist expert. He's the one that designs a lot of our workshops, and he's the one that came up with these skills, putting them together. So originally these were used in marriage and family therapy or just, but the point is you can use them in any situation. It's just like me, I'm a retired psychologist, and I used to use these skills in therapy and to teach them to other people, but it was usually where they're having a difficult relationship. No one ever thought about using these and applying them in a political context, but they work there too. So yeah, it can work in a lot of ways. Other ways you might use these skills in the future. Anyone else?
Teaching it to children.
Teaching to children, yeah. That's a very good. Yeah. I'm not sure what age would be a good age to start, but some version of that would be very good. The younger you get them, the better. Okay, we'll continue to work on your evaluation, but in the meantime, I want to just thank everyone involved. Braver Angels Arkansas, who David and I are from, we appreciate the opportunity to talk to people. We very much appreciate y'all coming here, listening, and participating. Please spread the word about us. We appreciate very much Patricia Matthews and the Interfaith Arkansas Council for sponsoring this with us and helping us out with this event, and very much appreciate our host, Unitarian Universalist Church of Little Rock. So thank you so much. Oh, and I also want to thank Sean, who's come up here to do all the camera work. Plus, he's real handy in the tech department. When the normal slide projector didn't work, he managed to make this work. So thank you, Sean. And there are other people, but we really appreciate everybody's involvement. So a little bit about what's next. So if y'all liked what you did tonight, and I think you did, I don't actually have this on here, but let me tell you, October 9th at Fletcher Library from 6:30 to 7:45, we're going to have the last of our monthly series of civil conversations. We've been doing this for about a year now, and if you look up on our website, you can find out more about it. But we've been talking about different things for a year, trying to use these LAP skills. And what we're going to talk about this time, because it's right before the election, we're going to say, what can we do to build or maintain relationships after the election? And we're going to have that discussion. So if any of y'all are interested in that, please come check us out there. We do offer presentations, workshops, and events, short or long or medium, whatever you want. So if you have any group, organization, church, school, college that is interested in hearing from us, We do a lot of different things, a lot of different presentations and workshops. And if you're interested in podcasts, we sponsor a podcast called On the Other Hand. Me and April Chatham Carpenter from UA Little Rock, Applied Communications Department Chair, we interview Arkansans who in various ways reach across the political aisle or other forms of division. In fact, we've got an interview with Patricia on Monday. She reaches across religious division. So check that out. You'll find links on most of the popular podcast sites, or you can go to our website, arkansas.braveryangels.org, and we've got a link to it there. So that's it. Thank you all again so much. I'm going to ask Patricia Matthews to come up and kind of give some closing remarks.
I think at the end of the night, it's important to know how long I'm going to talk, so maybe 2 minutes more. So we're gonna go home soon. Glenn asked me to close things up. So I want to ask you this question. I think you all know the answer. What are the 2 things you're not supposed to talk about at Christmas and Thanksgiving? Yeah, right. So that answer is why we teamed up with Braver Angels. There are so many things in our world that seek to divide us or that have divided us. And both the Interfaith Center that aims to reduce fear and prejudice among the people of the world's religions and Braver Angels that wants to bridge the political divide, we have this hope that we really can break through those divides. And the reason being is that for me, a deep value is that I think we're all put on this earth to enjoy it and to enjoy each other. And isn't it sad that our beliefs would divide us apart from each other? And so that's the core reason that we're doing this, is to be able to enjoy our lives and be connected with each other and our world and the mystery that is beyond us. There's this, several of y'all have heard me say this, there's a book called American Grace, and it's got some good social science in it. And what social science says is that if you know one person, and this was for a different faith, but I would say, or from a different political perspective, if you know one person from that different perspective, and you know a little bit about their perspective, then your position toward everyone from that perspective and toward that faith tradition or that political group is going to be more positive. So that's really interesting. That's what y'all did here tonight. You're interested in getting to know one person that may think differently than you, to listen to their core values like David spoke about, to learn a little bit about them. Then that's going to change how you see all Muslims or all Republicans or all Democrats, right? So that's the work that we're doing. I want to give you props because y'all took the time out of your lives to come and learn. You are the peacemakers in the world, and we do need people that believe there is a different way to be together, and I'm so grateful that you all were here. I want to close with a benediction that came out of the Church of England almost 100 years ago, that the UU Church uses, the Presbyterian Church uses, lots of folks use it. So this is your dismissal and your farewell and our hope for how we're going to go back out in the world. Go forth into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast that which is good. Render to no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the afflicted. Honor all beings. Love, serve, and rejoice. Amen, amin, shalom, salam, shanti, peace, blessed be.